Did you know that I am the co host of another podcast called Gather Darlings with the amazing Carrie Albers, aka Dementia Darling? This space is all about heartfelt conversations, real life caregiving, and if you know both Carrie and I, we keep it really fun. There's a lot of laughter, just kind of sharing all the things. So we're giving a sneak peek of that today on my willGather podcast, so you can have a glimpse into what that podcast is like. We invite you to follow us at Gather Darlings on Instagram. Find Gather Darlings on Apple, Spotify, all your platforms that you love. And in this episode, we sit down with the wonderful Veronica Shanklin. She is a full-time caregiver and founder of Dementia Care Warriors. So we talk all about the realities of caregiving, how filming with Wine, Women, and Dementia with Kitty Norton went, how do we manage burnout, finding balance, and we even talk about dating while caregiving. So you can learn more in our episode description, but just excited for you to meet her and support her mission and their nonprofit. They do so much work to help educate and bring the community together, provide respite care, resource, support, everything that we need in this community and this space. So our podcast is not possible without the support of you who listen. And now we're welcoming sponsors, which makes that even more exciting. We can provide more value. I'm really looking forward to that. And I know caregiving can be overwhelming, but we have tools that can help bring calm, connection, engagement into your world as a caregiver, into your loved one's world, and senior living community. So that's where Zinnia TV comes in. It is designed for people living with dementia. They create soothing video content tailored to your loved one's unique needs. So imagine you can watch gentle nature scenes, things that are familiar to your loved one. There are so many different categories and relaxation. And when communication feels tough, they've got word queuing and daily activity videos that support those meaningful moments together. We invite you to visit zinniatv.com. The link is in the episode description, and use the code GATHER20 for 20% off an annual subscription. I promise you will not be disappointed. The founder cared for her husband living with dementia, so it is near and dear to their hearts and mine as well. And enjoy this episode with Miss Veronica Shanklin and the amazing Carrie Albers, Dementia Darling.
I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you.
And you are a wealth of knowledge that I'm just so grateful that we can learn from you. And both Nicole and I, we know you from the documentary with Kitty. So we and I knew about you before, of course, but that's really, I was seeing you in that video, in that documentary, and it was such a powerful documentary.
Thank
And
you.
yes, and it's just we wanted to talk to you about that and just all the things. But would you introduce yourself to us, Veronica, and like
Sure.
who you are, what you do, because it's incredible. And I don't want to leave anything else. I want it to be from your words.
So my name is Veronica Shanklin. I am a full-time caregiver for my mom. I was also a full-time caregiver for my grandmother, both who were living with Alzheimer's. And I've been a full-time caregiver for almost 10 years now. So it's crazy to think about it, because clearly when I started this journey, I did not know that it was going to be this long of a journey. So I've been a full-time caregiver. I was actually living in Chicago. I lived in Chicago for 10 years before this, and I was living my best life. I was a young single bachelorette, just free, had a great marketing job in corporate America. But I was coming home to visit my mom and my grandmother. And my mom was taking care of my grandmother at the time. And I could kind of tell my mom was struggling with taking care of my grandmother. And then at some point, my mom calls me and she says she is in a car following an ambulance to the hospital with my grandmother in it. And so I'm like, okay, so she's kind of keeping me, telling me what happened. My grandmother was at a family friend's house. She got really agitated, was, trying to leave. Family friend couldn't manage it. My mom comes. My grandmother ends up lashing out at my mom for the first time ever. which of course freaks my mom out. And my grandmother ends up having a seizure. So that's what led to this. We're in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. So I'm still in Chicago and just kind of getting the play by play on the phone. But I could tell my mom didn't really have a grasp of what was going on, you know? And so, long story short, a couple days later, my grandmother's still in the hospital. I'm still just on the phone trying to get an understanding. And I end up coming home and talking to doctors and social workers and nurses, et cetera. And so that's what started my caregiving journey. And that was around 9 or 10 years ago. So ended up moving home the following year.
A year
And
later.
yeah,
So
a
were
year.
you doing like long distance caregiving for that whole
It
year?
wasn't that long of long distance caregiving. So maybe
Okay.
this happened in the fall and I moved home in the spring, you know.
Okay. Fast.
But a year after that incident, I moved home. You know, it's me and my mom and my grandmother. And I can tell that my mom is repeating herself.
Mm.
And I'm like, hmm. And at this point, clearly I'm not a dementia educator. You know, I'm just learning and reading things, et cetera. And my mom and I had actually gone to a class at the Alzheimer's Association, like an all-day class that was really good. Talked about everything from communication and finances and what to expect, et cetera. So I did have that little knowledge, but I'm starting to notice things with my mom that I'm like, not really sure. So long story short, take her to the doctor and she's diagnosed. So now it's my mom and my grandmother. Of course, my mom is in very early stages. She's still working, still driving, and still helpful with my grandmother. But of course, eventually, you know, that progresses. Um, and so then it's my mom and my grandmother and I. Again, I had left my career in Chicago. So I'm kind of bored, you know, and like not working and like, okay, I got to get out this house. So I go and I start volunteering at the Alzheimer's Association. Um, and partly to gain resources and kind of, you know, learn and those sorts of things. And as I'm volunteering there, I just started meeting people and like building this network. Eventually, they asked me to serve on the board for our chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. So that also led me to just learning more and just building more connections, et cetera. And so fast forward 2017, my grandmother's journey ends with Alzheimer's. She was on hospice. She was on home hospice for like 2 years. She was on home
Wow.
hospice, which is something that people are always shocked because, you know,
Yeah.
but this is a real sidebar. People often wait until the very end,
Yeah.
you know, to call hospice in. And I am always encouraging people, just ask, just try, just get an
Preach.
assessment.
Yes.
All they can say is no, you know,
Right. Right.
Love
and
hospice.
try again, you know, a little later. So, but back to the story, 2017, my grandmother passes. So now it's just my mom and I. And 2019, I started doing support group happy hours. So I would just,
Awesome.
and mind you, I've been on this journey so long. I've been to numerous, you know, support group meetings. I facilitated support group meetings by this point. And I really didn't see a lot of people who look like me. I
Mm-hmm.
did see it was a lot of like older women, a lot of older white women, taking care of, you know, their spouses and just not having the same conversations or thoughts and things that I'm dealing with from a life standpoint. So I started this support group, happy hour support group. We meet at a Mexican restaurant over margaritas and tacos every month. And so again, this is 2019. And then I ended up hosting, this is before I formally had a nonprofit. So
Okay.
yeah, so this is just me.
That's
I like
so
to I
awesome.
like to plan events.
We need these all across the country.
So we're doing that. I end up partnering with the Alzheimer's Association to host Hope for Tomorrow for African American caregivers, which was like an all-day education seminar. And then long story short, in November, we received our 501(c)(3) nonprofit and we became Dementia Care Warriors. So at that point, I start planning my own big day for caregivers called Revive Refresh. It's scheduled for March 2020. It's going to be all day, and it's just a day to pour into caregivers with everything that we have. And so our plans were we're not doing box lunches, nothing against box lunches, but we're going to have a nice catered brunch because I feel like, caregivers are not often at the forefront of
So
this
true.
journey. We're always worried about our loved ones, which we should be, but caregivers need love too. So this is our day to love on caregivers. It's a big day. And March 13th, 14th, I think was the day it was planned. And
Oh,
our venue closed
yeah.
that week for COVID.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well, let's just push it forward and we can just do it in June. Let's plan. So we pushed it forward to, I think, like June 6th. And so we're leading up to June 6th, and we're like, I don't think the world is back to
Right.
where it's supposed to be by June 6th. So then it's like, okay, well, people are doing these virtual events. Maybe we should learn how to do virtual events. Fast forward, we end up doing Revive Refresh in 2020 virtually. We end up doing it in 2021 virtually. And finally in 2022, we actually have our first big Revive Refresh. We have caterers, live DJ, vendors. It was just an amazing day. It was great. I was so glad to finally get us all in one room and to be able to like share the love and education, etc. And so part of Dementia Care Warriors is building a caregiver community, because I talk to a lot of caregivers who just need someone to talk to. And most people who are not caregivers do not really understand or who don't have any experience with caregiving, don't necessarily understand. There's certain things you don't want to say because you might be a little embarrassed, certain feelings you don't want to express. And so I just want to build this open space where caregivers can come together and get education and get love and get support, resources, etc. And that is Dementia Care Warriors. That was
I'm
a long
no,
intro.
I love it. I'm obsessed.
Thank you.
I think too, when I hear you share your story, and I had glimpses of it, but I I love that you're meeting people where they're at, right? And like what we need in that moment when you were like, I needed people that were similar to what I was going through in that phase, and doing the happy hours and then bringing people together and making them feel special. So it's just so awesome to see how like you've taken what you know and what you've learned and fueled it into this like Carrie and I were saying earlier, this amazing purpose. We get to learn from you too. So,
Well, and I'd way rather go to a happy hour than a support group. You're going
I
to get way more people to go to that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it turns
yeah.
into support group, right? We all know
Right.
when you're with your friends, it's therapy, it's free
it's
therapy.
so
And so
Absolutely.
it's
true.
like, why aren't we doing that and giving caregivers time to have fun, not sit in a circle and cry or
Right.
necessarily, which is good sometimes and great but
Right.
we need a night out or we
Right.
need that.
And I mean, some things are for some people, some things
Yes,
are for
yes.
other people. You know what I mean? Everyone doesn't want to go to a happy hour, like
Yeah.
type situation. But there are people out there who do. And there also are a lot of younger caregivers who
Mm,
don't have this type of space and around other younger caregivers
yeah.
to be able to commune and have that community.
Are you finding that when you first started the caregiving, that you're seeing more and more younger caregivers that need that support? Or I guess maybe more talked about, right? We have like more awareness of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think social media also is playing a big part in getting younger stories out. Most people don't think of young caregivers when you think of Alzheimer's and dementia. You just think of like the older people taking care of the older people because that's what you see in marketing materials, et
Yeah.
cetera.
Okay.
So, and even at the events I was going to, like because they were not very dynamic, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And very standard caregiver conference. So, like I said, we have a live DJ, okay? Like we have giveaways all day. So for a couple years, like actually the last 3 years, I had valet parking because I'm like, that's not something that you need to be worried about, and just each year I add, other perks and other things that I think caregivers will benefit from.
Yeah, I love
Yes.
how you're not doing what's always been done just because that's what's always been done. You know what I mean? It's like that, like, why are we not doing it the way that we want to do it? And I think that that's so cool.
We definitely
Yeah.
want to be disruptors,
Hmm.
I love that.
in this caring for the caregiver space
Hmm.
because we can, and it it's my organization, so
Yeah.
whatever
Get
we
it?
want to do. I'm not answering to a lot of red tape and
So
bureaucracy and,
true.
Oh,
oh, you have to
goodness.
have this approved and, all of that.
It's so
No,
true.
if somebody comes to me with an idea and it's a good idea, I'm like,
Yep.
If
Let's
it's
let's
do
do it.
needed, I
it.
mean, like you said, that is the number one thing I get pushed back on, or like, and for good reason. When I'm like, "Oh, have you tried support groups?" And they're like, "No one in the support group looked like me, or was in the same position as me, or even knew how to talk to me." So that's a
Right,
no. I'm like,
right.
touche. I
Yeah.
don't blame you at all. And so, like, we need to be making these spaces available, like what you're doing. I mean, this needs to be everywhere.
Right. Right.
It would be
So
packed.
So my latest thing, or what we started doing last fall, is not just the support group meetups, but now we're doing actually activities and events and things like that. So we did a yoga and meditation for caregivers for one of our meetings. We recently just did improv for caregivers, partnership
Oh,
with a local improv comedy theater, and they have a program called Improv for Caregivers, which is really, I've done it a couple times and I love introducing caregivers to it because it really just talks about different ways and different strategies to cope and deal with behaviors, et cetera. So that was cool. Right now I'm trying to do a CPR training for caregivers.
Smart.
So
really good.
that's probably what we have coming up next.
It's so true. Like with the lack of representation and age and all of it, it's like, I think the data from I don't quote me on this, but it's like from the ages of like 18 to 43, I think, isn't it like 46% or something when you add up the numbers? So it's like almost half of caregivers
Yeah.
are under the age of 40.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are we not, having this be such more of a conversation?
I think
So,
a lot of people don't know they're doing all of it. I
mm,
really think people like they don't see themselves as caregivers, so it's harder
mm,
to distinguish too. I don't know if that's how you guys feel, but I just feel like, you know, we are kind of not everyone we know, but a lot of people are just like, well, of course that's my mom. Like I'm gonna do this. And like
Right.
they don't think it's like a role they took
Right.
on.
yeah,
Yeah.
Especially younger caregivers,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
younger caregivers. They're really just doing what needs to be done, you
right.
know.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, to keep life going.
I have
But
a
yeah.
question,
Sure.
unless I'm carried, was
No,
I?
no, no, go.
This is what's fun about this podcast, Veronica, is that we just get to chat. Like we're all
Yes.
hanging out.
Yes. No
Um,
pressure.
so two things. One is not serious, and then I'll get into my serious question. But are you in the Dallas area?
I
Is that
am.
okay? So I'm in Minnesota, and I have to congratulate your Dallas Mavericks
Oh,
for
thank you.
kicking our butts.
One more game. One more
One
game.
more game.
Yeah, one more chance.
Right. I don't know if we're gonna pull it off.
This is true.
Uh,
Thank
but
you.
it's been fun. It's been fun to watch. Second, more serious question is, so Katie Norton was a guest of mine on my other podcast, and we talked all about wine, women and dementia. And first, I mean, it's just so cool to go have a glimpse into your world and share it, and through Kitty's lens, and she's just a riot.
She is just
Oh,
hilarious.
we got to meet in person at a care colloquium conference. This was like I think 2022 maybe. It was a little bit ago, but I'm just so curious, like hearing more about that. How did you guys come to be where you were then going to be a part of the documentary? Like I just would love a little behind the scenes.
Sure, sure. So I'm not sure if you've read Kitty's blog, Stumptown Dementia, but she's an amazing writer.
Yeah.
And so as I'm looking, I'm always on the internet researching, looking for, resources, et cetera. And I came across her blog. And her writing she just wrote so well and like so relatable, which is something that I'm always talking about and like really willing to talk about the things that people don't want to discuss. And that
Yeah.
was what you would find on her blog. And so she had one really amazing post, and I ended up reaching out to her about it. And it just kind of sparked up this conversation. And then we just kind of started sharing stuff and, me complimenting her on even more of her posts, et cetera. And we just kind of started chit-chatting and talking, et cetera, and just started building this friendship from there. And then after her mom passed, she decided she wanted to embark on this amazing project, and she reached out and asked if I wanted to be a part of it. So that's kind of the short story of how that started. And so she's hilarious. Like I've gone to um one film festival. I've gone to a film festival with her in Waco, where I met up with her at a film festival in Waco. So we had an Airbnb, we stayed together, hung out, all weekend. That
Gosh,
was hilarious.
what a
Uh,
riot.
and then even after filming, after the shoot, she and I and her friend who was with her stayed up on my patio, just drinking wine and talking and laughing and just kind of just having a good time. And then I did a screening here in Dallas last year for National Caregiver Month, and she flew in for that. And we did a kind of Q&A after that. So we've definitely built a good friendship, and the project is amazing. I'm so glad to be a part of it.
It's so powerful.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not a family caregiver, and I was bawling and I had chills
Hmm.
the whole time. I was like, this is so needed. Like, I was just like freaking out. And I just am so excited for all caregivers to see it and like it to
Hmm.
be, because I'm sure, how was it being able to do those screenings and like see it in person, the reactions? Was it really like beautiful and heart fulfilling for you?
It was, especially the first time I saw it on the big screen,
I
like in an
bet.
actual theater, like, oh,
Wow.
that's me, that's us. And so I took my mom, there was a film festival in Dallas, Topaz Film Festival, and it screened there. And so I took my mom and a bunch of friends from Dallas and stuff who got to see it. And my mom was like, that looks like me. I'm like, it is you.
It is.
A movie star.
Yes, yes, yes. So that
Um,
was nice that she got to see it too and got to, come out for that. But yeah, it's definitely like bucket list type situation to be a part of a film that's on the screen. And there's I've had people who've seen it like through Kitty send me like pictures of me on the screen in other states,
Aw.
like all around. And so I'm like, wow, this is really being seen by a lot of people all around the country. And then now she's even gone international.
World,
So
yeah.
right,
it's
right.
that's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it'll be even seen by more people this fall, right? Given,
Hmm.
I think it's at PBS that
Hmm.
is
Yeah, they do this year this year
sharing
with
that, which is
them.
Huge,
exciting. Oh,
huge.
so happy about that. Did you find it anything, um, I don't know if not changed is the right word, but you said people would start to write you. Did you notice that with the nonprofit or different things like that? Was it kind of this like catalyst for just more awareness and
Not really. I mean, not yet.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yet.
yeah. We got
The
time.
people I like that.
It's
Yeah.
coming.
Exactly. The people who reached out are more so people that, already know us and,
Yeah.
know of us. It hasn't. I mean, I've gotten support from strangers who have yet to figure out how they found us or,
Mm,
that sort of thing. But I'm just excited that, it's out there and it's growing and it's getting, more of an audience, et cetera, and more people get to see these stories that they can relate to and laugh and cry and, all of those things.
All the things. Yes. It's exactly the view that I think people needed.
Hmm.
The like the real view of, all the emotions and just like validation
Hmm.
for caregivers all
Hmm.
around.
Hmm.
Um, but I wanted to ask, so your mom got to go to one, which is awesome. And
Hmm.
I feel like you do a lot to include your mom on like all the things.
Hmm.
How do you do that and why is that important to you? Like, do you, and a second kind of follow up, sorry, but like when you do your group, like happy hours and stuff, do you do, and your conferences, do you have like a respite or do you have the loved ones come? Like, how does that work too?
It just depends. So definitely happy hour is really just for caregivers. So
Okay,
those
I figured.
meetups are just for caregivers. And I'm
Good.
really clear to try to make this a space where you can take a break and
mm,
get away.
Yes. Good.
Because I know firsthand that if I bring her anywhere with me, I am on. I am caregiving. Friends and family are always like, oh, you can bring her. Oh, you can, she can come. And I'm like, okay. And it's just a decision that I have to make of do I want to go to this function and actually be at the function
Yeah.
and, or do I want to go with her and then, deal with the things that come along with bringing her.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm blessed to be in a space and quote unquote industry
Mhm.
where I can bring her with me places. Like she's come to meetings with me.
Good.
We had a big education event in February and she was there, but I had like family friends, so she sat with them. Uh, but her thing is she likes to read. She likes to read out loud.
Oh, that could be tricky.
She likes to read out loud and she likes to read the letters. So she will, in a quiet space, read out loud. And so she was doing that at this event that we had in February. And she was sitting at a table, full of family and friends or whatever. And nobody was bothered. Nobody was even, they were just letting her read. And of course, being the daughter, and also the facilitator of the event, I'm like, shh, and they're like, she's fine, she's fine. I'm like, okay. But it's so interesting though, because honestly, being in a space, you're in a room with other caregivers. You're in a room with people who are here to
They
learn
get it.
Alzheimer's
Have
and
so
dementia.
much grace. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So nobody was really noticeably bothered by what she was doing. But yeah, I take her a lot of places with me. She is our volunteer of the year. Okay, every year she's our volunteer of the year. And I will say it's getting more challenging, as she progresses.
Yeah.
But we've always, like from the beginning, we've always traveled. Like when my grandmother was on hospice, you get 5 days respite. And so
Yeah.
mom and I would take a trip and go to Miami or go to, Vegas or different places. But I've always been very intentional about getting out the house. And even when my grandmother was here, we were always, outside or whatever. I will say, this last year has been a little more challenging in doing that. And then even honestly with myself, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
So, you do get to kind of a burnout stage where you have to really be intentional about digging out of it.
Mhm.
I unfortunately have what's called a senior companion through a nonprofit program here.
Can you
Mm.
And
explain that? Can you explain that? What
sure.
is that?
So there's a local nonprofit in Dallas called the Senior Source, and they have a senior companion program, and it's older adults who are still active and cognitive, et cetera, and they match them with other older adults who need assistance. We have had the same senior companion for like 2.5 years, I want to say.
That's
Um,
incredible to get the same person, right?
Yes, and she is a godsend. She comes and picks up my mom a few days a week, and they go up to the senior center and hang out, or they might go shopping or go, hang out, whatever. And so it kind of gives me a break during the day. And it's an amazing program. So that has been
It's
helpful.
free?
That's incredible.
Everyone go see if your community has this. So
Um,
beautiful.
Yeah, it is. But it's one of those things that I learned about because I even had one for my grandmother.
Yeah.
Like for a period of time, I had one for my grandmother as well. And it's funny because my grandmother's senior companion is friends with our current senior companion that we have now. But it's so different from just having a sitter, like a home health person or,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, because they get out, they go around, they do things, and she's really, my senior companion is actually older than my mom. But there's these super agers who are still active and
Good for
out and
her.
about and doing their thing. And so she's one of those. And she's taking my mom kind of like a little sister and taking her under
Well, it
her wing.
benefits everyone. It benefits her
It does.
immensely as well.
Exactly. And she loves my mom and she's protective of my mom. So I'm so grateful to have her.
So awesome. You talked a little bit about, the burnout, right? You have been doing this for what, 10 years, more than 10 years. How do you navigate that? Like I know, and I'm sure that's a lot of what you hear in like the support group and things that you guys can honestly share about, but just saying like it is hard and those days do get really long. Or maybe you don't manage it sometimes. That's okay
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Right?
We're real talk here. Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes I
real
don't manage
talk.
it. And sometimes I'm preaching to caregivers things that I should be preaching to myself,
Yeah.
about being intentional. And sometimes I have to catch myself like, Veronica, this resource is over here.
Mm.
Call them, see if there's anything available. I mean, I think at this point, the biggest challenge and just along the journey is always respite. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's always getting a break because respite is not cheap. Like minimum agency respite is like $25 an hour. So
Yeah.
then you think about, I'm gonna pay someone $100 to come watch her, but then I'm also gonna go out to eat. Now,
Right.
so now I'm spending $200 so I could just go out to eat. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's not that deep. I don't have to go out to eat. So I'll
You
just
can
Right.
talk yourself out of it a lot.
I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. I was going to say, like, I do that with certain things. Where I'm like, well, I don't really need to do it that much. Or
right.
we downplay, oh, it's not maybe that important that I would want to have to spend all that money,
But it
right?
It's
is. It's
it's
worth
really
it.
interesting because one of our programs through Dementia Care Warriors is a respite scholarship program.
Oh,
So I like
amazing.
all of these things are things that, I wish that I had or that I know would be helpful to caregivers. So right now it's a break for a day. And so it's a 8-hour break for a day where we partner with a home health company, have somebody come in, etc. But the interesting thing about it is some caregivers don't use their scholarships. Like we're really like, okay, all right. And like to the point that I kind of had to put an expiration date on it because
Right.
we want you to get out. And they're like, well, I don't have anything I really need to do, or I want to wait until it's something special. You know what I mean? Which I
Mm,
totally get
Yeah.
myself. I 100% get it.
yeah.
So we kind of have to like nudge them, like, go,
Right.
well, just take the day. And, even if you go in your room and sleep, you
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
seriously,
while the sitter's here, but
Yeah.
we try to encourage them to use this day that you have, and when they do, they're so grateful and so glad that they got out because we actually have a professional caregiver here,
yeah,
who
Right.
they come in, they do an assessment beforehand and talk to them and meet them, et cetera, and then come back for this, 8-hour break. So that it's really interesting that, and I understand it of taking the time, like not, it doesn't have to be a gala,
Right.
or
yeah,
some
Right.
great special thing that you're trying to do. Just go to the mall. You know what I mean?
the
Yeah.
non-special things are probably more important, let's be real. Like having
Right.
Right.
those true, like I know self-care can all be different things and like, going to the gala could be that, you know, for
Right.
someone, but truly like you said, I would probably take it to nap all day and like watch the TV I wanted and take a long shower uninterrupted. Like, but
Right.
people I don't think either, yeah, there's always an excuse, I feel like, as we just said, and because they don't feel they deserve it a lot of the time, right?
Right.
Like we're just like, well, we have so much to do. If I do that, I could have been doing these things for my loved one. And
Right.
I hear that so much. It
Yeah.
breaks my
Yeah. It's definitely something that we offer.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking through is, I don't know if this is the right comparison, but during COVID, we got used to being inside and maybe not seeing people and doing things like that. And I know for me personally, working from home and having my kids and all of that, after that time and when we technically could go do all the things, I found myself not really used to doing that. So it was almost like I had to break through this like uncomfortableness of, well,
Mhm.
like, what do I want to do? Like, where do I want to go? Like, for me, and I also had some health stuff, but for me, like, going out to eat was always something that I loved and like foodie restaurants. And anywhere I'd travel, I'd have a list of restaurants.
Mhm.
And it's been interesting because in the last couple of years, I've like had no interest,
Mhm.
no interest in wanting to go to a foodie restaurant. Like it just seems like, oh, it's a lot of work. And then what if, I don't know. So I feel like that could be some of it too. Like when we are caregiving and we're tired
Mhm.
and we're drained emotionally and physically, that it's learning how to be out into the world again, almost not like out
Yeah.
into the world, not
Yeah.
that we can't, but also like and socializing or pushing through when we're tired or like we know it'll bring us joy when
Mhm.
we do it, but it's like how do we get there?
Absolutely. I 1000% think that COVID did have a lot to do with us getting used to just being around the house and being
Yeah.
okay with that. I think the other thing for me is driving,
Mm,
like to go. I mean, I live in the suburbs, so you have to drive downtown. It's like 30 minutes to go anywhere or more. And
mhm.
I get used to just being here around going to the grocery store, which is one of my favorite things to do. Um,
I feel that.
and being at home is
Yeah,
kind of the pattern and the routine, that we
Mhm.
have around here.
for
Mhm.
sure. I have
Yeah.
a question about the burnout because you've been at this for so long. So from your perspective, I just wonder, for like caregivers out there that are in, earlier years with your burnout, did you see that it's like it like happens and then it goes away for a long time, or is it like consistently like happening, or is it like for years you're in burnout? Like what, like I know it's different for everyone, but like what has your experience been?
It's a roller coaster.
Okay. Yeah.
It is definitely a roller coaster with highs and lows and, straightaways. It's good times and bad times, and you go
Yeah.
through periods, I think. I call it
Yeah.
periods. Yeah.
Mm.
And I can recognize when I'm in a rut or when I'm, in a down period. And then also when I'm active and doing things and, out, etc., then I'm feeling, more up.
Yeah.
We used to travel a lot more. Um, and I haven't traveled as much in this last couple year, and I can tell that I'm kind of going through travel withdrawal. Like I need a
Yeah.
trip or whatever.
Yeah.
I need a trip.
I get
Um,
that too, where I'm like, I'm
Itching.
feeling itching.
Yeah.
right, exactly. But it's more and more challenging as she progresses,
Yeah.
to figure out care, while she's traveling or who can manage and, that sort of thing. So, um, but yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster. It's ups and downs, and it's probably been that way for the last few years of, you know, and just, I mean, I'm always preaching about being intentional, you know, like you're gonna stay down unless you put forth some effort to do whatever it is that will pull you out of that rut, you know, whether it's spending the $100 for that sitter if you have
Yep.
it, and forcing yourself to get out. Because when you do force yourself to get out, you're glad you did.
Yeah.
You have a good time. You're like, oh wow, this is outside. This is what people are doing out
Yeah.
here, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my
And I
God.
will say, even like for me, Dementia Care Warriors is also an outlet for me because
Ah,
I'm hosting these support group happy hours. I'm hosting, these events and whatnot that I also benefit from a social standpoint.
absolutely. So it's
Yeah.
not just like what, like, I mean, this could be true for some caregivers. So you just, but you haven't gone through and it was like one big burnout and then you just like went for it. It's a fluid thing. It's just like being a
Yeah,
human. Like there's ups and
it's a
downs,
fluid
and
thing
that's the
because
same in
yeah,
caregiving. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I can't afford to just be down forever because there's no one else here.
No. And did you learn that though? Like you obviously didn't probably think this way in the first couple of years. I'm like, you've
No.
learned this, you've
Oh
put
yeah.
work in.
Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely. But I
it's,
think it's also an interesting place to be when you're the only one. There's a lot of solo caregivers that if someone else could just wash the dishes or fix dinner
Yeah,
or,
all of
you
it.
know, have
Yeah.
to do it every day, especially as a single person with no kids.
Mhm.
an
So,
only child too.
well, no, I have a sister, but
Okay.
she
Okay. Sorry.
Mm.
Um, so as a single person with no kids, and I mean, I have like it's that's also a roller coaster of support. At some point,
Yeah.
it's been 10 years. So there are points in time where I've had like a super great support team and then they kind of fall off. And it's so interesting because I've been doing this so long, I feel like there's always somebody is coming. You know what I mean? Like even if once this person falls off, somebody is coming. And right now, that person is our senior companion. So she's been here. Before that, I had an aunt who would come over and help and do things, et cetera. So it's
Yeah,
just, phases of at different points, there's different people. So
so true. Well, we don't have to talk about this, so I'm going to preface it with that. Would you be open to, I just am curious about like dating, like how do you date? Wow.
what's that?
How
That's a thought.
do you date, right?
What is
With
that?
caregiving? The real talk stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's
Of
not
the,
much to talk about.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
I dated far more in the beginning stages.
Yeah.
So of course,
Okay.
when my mom could be at home with my grandmother, or I could set them up for success, and I could go away for a weekend. Like I would meal prep and put labels and all these things. I have somebody scheduled to come by and check in, and all those sorts of things. As of today,
Yeah.
not really. Was dating someone maybe like a year or two ago who was really understanding and really helpful, and he would cook. He
Mm,
was a great cook, and he would
That's
come over
awesome.
and cook for me and my mom and hang out with us. It was really understanding of my scheduling and time and availability. So, I mean, I believe there are people out there who do get it, you know what I mean, and who
is
would
there a
understand.
caregiver dating app?
I don't know. I have not discovered such
Maybe
a
this is a business
There's a lot of women on that app, let me tell you. There's a lot of women. Don't know how many guys.
I think
We'd
there's
have to
more
really open it
men.
up.
I
No, I
think
know.
there's
I
more
agree.
men than we what's the word? Than we think that there would be. Like, I believe that they're not as maybe vocal about it, is the word I'm
Right.
trying to
They're
say.
out there. But no, that's a good business plan. Business
It
idea.
is. It is. I'm like,
People who care find each other.
maybe one of our support groups is a caregiver speed dating.
There we go.
Yeah. Because I mean, dating's already hard to, it's like the dating pool's like, woo. And then
Right.
on top of it, you're like, now I need
Yeah.
someone that's chill with this and like kind of gets it, or maybe was a caregiver and like understands, and that's going to be even harder.
Right.
Understanding that, yeah, just a different dynamic. But I think we're human and we all crave the connection and intimacy, right? So it's like balancing. That's another way of self-care too, I think, of like, how do I, and I get sometimes we're not in a place in life where we're even thinking about that, but I don't know, just
Yeah, he would have to come knock on my door.
yeah,
Make it real easy.
Yeah.
Fall from the sky.
It's the UPS guy, apparently.
Oh, okay. They're pretty odd. They
But
got good legs.
yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I imagine, and I mean, just talking to other caregivers, at some point is less and less of a priority.
Right.
Yeah.
The longer you're at this, the less is like, let me add a man in my life.
Right. One more
into the
schedule
mix.
to juggle.
One more person to worry about. Like, no thanks.
Exactly. Somebody to answer to. and all
You're
that.
like, I want to be alone sometimes. Like,
Right.
and I don't even get that right now. So, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Okay, yeah. That would be really hard. So wait, if you like, I want to know too. So if you were ever like on a dating app, let's say, would you put in your like bio like caregiver? Like, would that be one of the first
Probably.
things you say?
Yeah, I would put it in there.
Yeah.
And it might, attract a like-minded person who's also a caregiver.
I
has,
agree.
Yeah, for
interest
sure.
in this. If you have someone that you want to, introduce me
Okay.
to, definitely open to that. But
Perfect. Sounds good. Dallas, I'll keep that in mind to meet a lot of people.
Yeah. Like, just saw a viral video, and I want to do this everywhere now. It was you pitch your single friends like in a PowerPoint to a
I
whole
saw that.
audience. Did you see that? And it looks so funny. The one thing they showed was like, he has no student loans. And everyone was like, and I'm like, I would love to go to that. I would love to pitch one of my friends. That would be amazing.
Veronica.
Yeah, I know. We got to do it.
So good.
We'll do it in your front yard so you don't have to go anywhere.
I'm here. Okay. I will be right here. But okay, we can Zoom and FaceTime, all those things.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I
I know.
love it.
There's so many different ways of connecting now. It's like phone and FaceTime, like you were saying, FaceTime and
When you put yourself out there too on social media, so you never know who might be like, that's my woman. You just people slide into people's DMs. I don't know.
There's actually quite a few people that have met each other through the DMs and have like gotten married.
Yes.
I do know that. It did happen.
Okay. All right. Y'all be the first to know. Okay?
Check those requests in the
Keep us
DMs. You
updated.
never know.
I will let y'all know when that happens. Okay.
When I first started Dementia Darling, I would get sugar daddy
Really?
messages one after the other after the other.
Wow.
It finally stopped after like a year. It was so weird, these guys. I don't know, maybe it's my location in Vegas. Maybe I was like popping up for all of them because there's like so many sugar daddies.
That makes sense.
And sugar babies. But no, I thought it was so funny. I was like, do you see my page? Like, there's all these women like who are like blatantly wanting like that attention, and you come to my page.
So Carrie, tell us, which one did you date? How did it go?
Yeah. That's how I quit my job. I'm just
What
kidding.
happened? Oh my gosh, I got
I
a
wish.
text from my daughter the other day. I have a 17-year-old Veronica, and my son is 13, but she sent me a text randomly that was like, Mom, I think you should sell your feet pictures on OnlyFans.
I have had conversations with other caregivers who
Right.
have talked about doing that.
I have a feeling every woman has had this conversation
Okay.
over a drink
Right.
because I have
I know, like
during
gosh,
COVID.
just my
Yeah.
feet. I mean, maybe I could handle. But it was so funny. And I think she probably saw a TikTok video about selling
Right.
your feet pictures or something.
It's
Oh
a
man.
thing. It's a thing. So I've heard. So I've heard.
Oh,
It's
that's
a
so
full-blown
funny.
thing. But you have to put a picture of your face to get on the website.
Oh,
I know
you.
from experience.
Oh.
My
Oh,
friend and I had drinks and I were like, let's just see what it entails.
what does this
You
really
have to send in
mean?
your ID, and we're like, nope, we're done.
Oh, wow. Okay, never mind.
I was
I
like, how
know
do
it
they
would
know
be
it's our
one
feet?
thing, right? It would just like so anonymous. Then you'd be like,
I know.
okay,
Be like,
Right.
maybe.
let's get fake IDs. We're this poor.
Okay.
But no, that was during COVID. My friend and I really thought about it. So that's embarrassing. But no, I
So,
wanted to know because I didn't ask it earlier, so I'm sorry I'm like switching back to this. But I wanted to know because we were talking about like going on a vacation and how it's getting harder for your mom to leave. Will the next vacation be with your mom, or do you want that to be with just you, or do you have a hope for one more vacation together?
So actually, my birthday is coming up in June. I have zero plans. In a
Ooh,
perfect world, however, I will be going somewhere.
yeah.
It'll probably be it won't be with my mom. I'll have to
Okay.
make arrangements for her. I did take a wonderful trip this past New Year's. I actually went to Berlin and Prague. For
Oh, wow. And at that time of year, ooh.
Yeah. It
oh,
wasn't bad though. It wasn't bad.
No, I bet
Those
it
were
was
like the 40s.
gorgeous.
was
Oh
I
it
yeah,
bet it
the
was
Christmas
still
gorgeous.
markets.
decorated
Like
Yeah.
maybe, yeah,
from?
like, oh, I bet it was magical
Yeah, the
there.
Christmas markets and the architecture and like everything was like super cool.
Did
It
you
was
go alone?
no, I actually went with a friend of mine.
What? That
Yeah.
sounds so fun.
Yeah, it was fun. So actually, so I've done a couple trips with a travel group. So this
Mm,
is going to tell you a little bit about me, right?
I love
So
this. Okay.
I was a couple years ago, I think maybe the year right before COVID, 2019. Someone introduced me to this travel group, and I'll tell you, it's called Passport Required. And so there's a guy, he owns a travel group, and at the beginning of the year, he lists the trips for the year. And
Mm,
all you know is the dates and where you're leaving from. You don't know where you're going. And you can only
Really?
take a 22
super
pound backpack.
cool.
Oh my. And how long are
You
the trips?
7 days.
Okay.
And you don't find out where you're going until a few days before the trip. So, but he gives you kind of weather, hints, et
Mm,
cetera, so you know how to pack or what you need to get. And so the first trip that I went on, I want to say was February 2019. And so I didn't find out where I was going. It left out of LA. So my mom and I had family in Houston. So my mom and I took Megabus to Houston. I dropped her off with family. I flew out to LA and I met up with three strangers at LAX at the airport. Never met these people before. We had a like a group chat
yeah.
that started as soon as, we signed up. So we kind of been talking, getting to know each other in there. Never met these people before, never met him before. So meet up at LAX and he's like, all right, here's your boarding passes. And we're like, cool. We have our big 22-pound backpacks and we're off. And
Oh,
so travel from LAX, eventually to Naples, Italy.
oh, fun.
And so we did Naples, we did like a road trip to Rome. We rented a car, drove up to Rome. We did the Amalfi Coast. Um, and it was like so much fun. It was so much. And you know what? I will say, I think because I have decision fatigue as a caregiver,
Yeah.
it's just
Yes.
nice to have someone else
Oh
playing.
my gosh.
Oh, that's smart. I was gonna say you're really brave,
That's
first off. But
Well,
like but that's really smart with the fact of you don't have to do
yeah.
any of the planning.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
he plans
Oh
everything
my
That's
like
incredible.
done. And so that was February 2019. And then I want to say all the years started to blur together, but either
Mhm.
August 2021 or 2020. It was still during COVID. He posted on Facebook that he wanted to do a road trip. Anybody want to do a road trip? Because you couldn't travel out the country at the time, right?
Right.
So he's like, anybody want to do a road trip? And it just so happened to work out that the timing was right, that I had someone that could watch my mom and the dates were, perfect. And I'm like, I think I want to do this. And they're fairly inexpensive trips. Because also I'm on a very strict caregiver budget over here,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you
Um,
travel with a group like that, you can kind of
yeah,
share
it's
costs of
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So that trip in August, I met up with them in Washington, D.C. So I flew into Washington, and then he gave us like the meeting point, which was at Union Station. So stayed overnight the night before, met up with some friends, then Union Station, and then he came by and picked up. It was me, another new friend who I had never met. And long story short, it ended up being six of us in an SUV. And so we leave DC, we drove up to West Virginia to like this kind of campsite type place that had like a man-made lake in the middle. And we just hung out all day at the lake and kayaked and all these things. Then left there and drove further north to like almost the Canadian border to Thousand Island, New York. But because it was COVID, you couldn't cross over into Canada. So we stayed in Thousand Island, had adventures there, met some people with a boat, went out on their boat, and they took us on like a tour of the bay and all of this stuff, which was super cool. Left there, drove over to Maine, where he was like, "Y'all want to go whale watching?" I'm like, sure, why not? So we go out on the coast of Maine to go whale watching, then back through Connecticut, and then back to DC.
Oh, what a trip.
I
Oh,
love this idea. But seriously, you're so brave. Like you have to be really outgoing.
But you know what? It's a couple things. One of them is that people who are willing to do this kind of stuff tend to
are,
be
Are
open-minded,
like cool people.
yeah,
yeah,
cool, laid-back type of
yeah,
people,
yeah.
And then he'd done like 50 trips before I went on my first trip with him. So
He
it
had it
was
down.
He had
reputable.
reviews, like
Yeah, he had reviews. It was social media and videos and pictures from all of his things, et cetera. But he's actually a friend now. When I went to LA and he was out there and he came and picked up my friend and I from the airport and we went on a LA adventure with him.
That's so
So
fun.
it's I clearly am an adventurous person in
Yeah.
a past
yeah.
life. I
Oh,
was
you
far more
so
adventurous.
are.
So
Oh.
again, about being intentional about holding on to pieces of yourself as you go on this journey. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like these are things that I would do if I wasn't a caregiver,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so still finding ways to keep a little bit of travel here and there, like even in so Berlin, Prague,
Mm.
we were, this was one of his trips, but it ended up just being myself and a friend because his trip guide, he had a trip guide that was supposed to come, had an emergency and couldn't come.
Mm.
So we just are on a adventure
That's awesome.
and he kind of gave us a loose itinerary for, things that we could do. And we just walked ourselves all over the
Oh,
city and
so
explored
amazing.
and it was fun. Good
I
times.
love it. I love it. And that's what a great, I mean, that's a piece of advice for caregivers too. It's like with the decision fatigue, which is so, I relate to that, and that I'm such a planner in every aspect of my life. And there's certain parts of it where I'm like, I don't want to make a decision. Just tell
Right.
me what to do.
Right. I don't care where we eat. I don't
I
care
don't
where the
care.
restaurant.
Just tell me, yeah. Just tell me what to do. So that's a great way to like still maybe do some of those things you love without having to like, oh my gosh, now I got to plan this big itinerary. You can just kind of show up and probably half the adventure is meeting all these different people too. And
Yeah,
like
who I still keep
meeting
in
who
touch
they
with. That's
are.
what's
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and you bond with people when you do experiences like that and you just meet them. It's like you've known them for years, I'm sure, after those
Oh yeah.
trips. And
Mhm.
it's just like, man, I can't believe that's a full-on industry now. Like that's what people like those companies. Like that's
Mhm.
because I've seen that before on like a reel, but I didn't really realize it's like probably many people are
Yeah,
doing that.
different
And
people organizing trips. Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. I love that. I once did was part of a bachelorette party and their friend group. They every time they did a bachelorette party for one of the girls, they would book everything and not tell her, and she would like literally touch down, and that's when she found out. And it was for one of my best friends, and it was New Orleans,
Oh, fun.
and it was during oh my gosh, why did I forget it? But it's not obviously Mardi Gras. It's this other one. It's like the other biggest event of the year parade, and it's the Gay Pride Parade. But I forgot what it's called, and it was like the best 5 days of my life. And she had no idea where we were going. And we kept telling her, we're going to Ohio. We're going to, Idaho. Like we kept messing with her, but I'm like, this would be so fun. So I love that. I think that's really cool because, yeah, decision fatigue is definitely a thing.
It's
Every night
so
I get to
real.
dinner time and I'm like, don't ask me what to have for dinner. It's too
I
much.
know.
You are an expert in supporting caregivers and specific and knowing specifically what caregivers need from experience. What is like something that you have on your heart that you feel like you want to tell a caregiver listening to this, or like a caregiver maybe in earlier stages of caregiving that feels maybe a little hopeless about what, things, and don't really know, worried about losing themselves. I just wanted to see if you had any like words of wisdom to that, because I that's one of the biggest things I just want to support caregivers with is keeping themselves, like we talked about, is keeping parts of ourselves and not losing ourselves through this process.
I think it just goes back to what I was saying about being intentional. Like that is a word that I am preaching to myself and preaching to all other caregivers because it can get really dark really fast,
Yeah.
and depending on your loved one, clearly all of our loved ones are different. They have different behaviors and personalities, et cetera. Some might be a little easier to deal with, some are a little harder to deal with. So
Yeah.
depending on where you are, it can get very challenging. And just remembering to be intentional about taking care of yourself, about taking those breaks, I think some people don't take the breaks because they're scared to have someone else watch their loved
Yeah.
one. You know what I mean? I think just knowing that your loved one is safe, even for a little period of time, so you can take those breaks is so important because you will burn out years and years of this without those breaks, without that intention, you will burn out. And that is not a place that you want to be. So, my words of advice are just to be intentional, to take care of yourself, to take those breaks. I know it is easier said than done, but finding a way to make it happen. And that's just the word that I always preach.
Such good advice for people that are wanting to connect with you, wanting to donate to the nonprofit. I think seeing the respite scholarships, the support groups, the education you provide. What else? What am I missing? Anything else?
All the events.
Dementia Live, the events, all
Yeah.
of that. How can we support you? Where can we donate?
So we are Dementia Care Warriors. Our website is dementiacarewarriors.org online. And so there's a donate button on the website. And then definitely follow us on social media. We're at Care Warriors on social media. And to your point about the things that we offer is a caregiver community. Like we want to be that full-fledged, all-around caregiver community that offers caregivers what they need to thrive on their journey. And that's from respite scholarships to education to support groups to Dementia Live. To your point, we do a Dementia Live simulation program and just so much more. Revive Refresh is coming up August 3rd.
And
I want to fly into Dallas to Revive Refresh.
and what I would love. So what virtually for people not in your area? What is that? Do you
So we're
have
working on
virtual?
an online resource
Okay.
now. And
Okay.
so if you follow us, join our email list, etc., hoping to have that launched before the August 3rd
Awesome.
event and to keep that moving because with us being on social media, we do attract and have followers from all across the country, and so just kind of building that. So Dementia Care Warriors is a 100% volunteer run organization at this point. I have an amazing board. I have amazing volunteers. But we are a smaller organization who is doing a lot. We're doing a lot with a little. So as we build more resources and human resources, capital, et cetera, we will definitely be looking forward to expanding to be able to reach caregivers all across the country.
And I know it's so hard and it's a lot of work. So just thank you for all that you've put into it. And I just want everyone to be able to utilize you.
Thank you.
It's just it's such an important community, and getting people as soon as they, think they're a caregiver, and just getting people as soon as possible into these kind of supports is vital for
Mhm.
quality of life and knowing, the best way to go forward. Because
I think
I mean, yeah.
another one of the reasons, and Kitty and I used to talk about this all the time, is to your point earlier, everything is so sad,
Yes.
and when I first started this journey, I had a blog called Be Myself and I, where I was sharing
I
tips
love that name so much.
for caregivers, right? And so I had this blog and I was just like, my blog is going to be uplifting and happy and have humor, etc., because everything I found was so sad. 10 years into this journey, I'm like, oh, I get why everything was so sad and whatnot. But
Harder time.
however, Dementia Care Warriors wants to be that space to bring some joy and some laughter and some good vibes, like your sign says behind you.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so that's what we're here to be.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
'Cause
it's so true. And I know it's so hard and it's the and, right? That like two things can be true at the same time. And one, Kitty just shares about that, like with her film and her conversations with all of you. It was like the laughter
Mhm.
and pulling in the humor in the midst of the really super hard stuff. So,
and there's such a fine line with the humor, and
Mhm.
there's such a fine line with, and this is different, but with the toxic positivity, because I always worry that like I'm too much for some people, and that's fine. Like I get it. And I really never want to come off as toxic positivity, but I'm also like, I don't want to be doom and gloom for you either, because you get enough of that outside of Instagram. You don't
Right.
need to come to my page and be like more depressed. So
Right.
it's like, how do you do that, but also validate like this freaking sucks? But
I
like,
think it's about being genuine. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And your
yeah.
positivity comes across as genuine and you
Thank
really
you.
care. And it's not like some fake, like, oh,
Thank
it's gonna
you.
be okay. Ha, ha, ha," you know.
Fine, everyone.
Right.
Yeah. No, yeah, I know. But it's so hard. Yeah. Because even like getting a good vibe sign, I feel like, are people gonna I would never get good vibes only.
Right.
That's the line. Won't
that's
Right.
buy that merch, but yeah,
yeah.
no. That's everywhere.
I
Not
think that's the
only.
key, just being
Yeah.
genuine. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Veronica, Carrie and I had recorded a conversation, was it last week? And I said, she's like a scratch and sniff, like through the internet, but it's like she always looks
I still don't get it.
and and I explain this because when you watch her online, it's like you can feel like this hug through the internet, right?
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
not a sniff because they don't smell good, but it's like it's a scratch and hug.
Scratch and hug. A scratch and hug. That's you.
Oh, it's so intense. Um,
It's
Now
fun.
that's been twice I've explained it and can't explain it well.
As long as we don't hug you and start
That's
scratching, it's
okay.
fine.
all the time. Well, I will say, have you guys? I know Nicole has, but Veronica, have you seen the thing? I used to sell it when I worked at Ugeria, but it's called the Hug. It's like a weighted
Mhm.
sensory combat. Okay, I
Mhm.
love it. But I used to sell it at conferences, and we'd have like a sign. It was like win a hug. And then when they'd ask me how much a hug was, I'd say, almost $200. And people literally thought it was a hug from me that they would win. And I was like, I am not this conceited that I'm like, it's 200 for a hug from
My
Dementia
hugs
Darling.
are
Yes,
valuable.
my hug. You win my hug in the raffle. It's like, no. So
That's
I think that people that didn't get that explanation think I'm very conceited in the conference realm. So just want to
or
clear that up.
just, I
All right,
mean,
guys.
Vegas, people are probably paying $200 for hugs in
There are
Vegas.
professional huggers that make a
Right.
lot.
Right. That's
A
a thing.
professional
I've met one.
professional cuddlers.
That's a
Professional
thing.
cuddlers. She watches movies and cuddles, and that is strictly it. And she pays her bills. That'll be a whole other episode.
Wow.
We'll give out advice. Just kidding. How to start your own business.
Creative way to
Um,
make money.
we already talked about feet. So. But Veronica, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And like you're busy as heck. So, and you gave us an hour. So thank you. I just really want to
Thank
thank you for
you for
that.
the invitation. Thank you for having me. I love what you guys are doing and sharing these stories and these conversations. And I'm just excited to be here. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.